What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Real Talk Real Estate. This is the David Greene Show. I'm David Greene, and we're talking the future of mortgage rates. Where are they headed? Where did they come from? Where did they go? What's going on with mortgages? You've got the president, you've got the Fed chair, and they have been having a war of words. Things are heating up between President Trump and Jerome Powell, as President Trump wants interest rates to come down to spur the economy, to get things moving again because tariffs are slowing things down. And Jerome Powell wants the president to leave him alone and let him do his job. Now, this is an interesting dynamic between these two because President Trump put Jerome Powell in position. At least that's the impression that I'm under from what I'm hearing on commentary on this. So we're going to get into some videos that talk about kind of the back and forth between them. And we've got videos from all sides of the political spectrum here, from CNN to Fox. So make sure as you're listening to this, you take it with a grain of salt, as each side tends to spin the story in the direction that they want you to look at it from. On this channel, we don't give you a direction. We give you the facts. We let you make up your own mind. So as you're listening to this, let me know in the comments what you're thinking, what questions you would need to have answered to make up your mind, and what concerns that you might have. All right, let's get to our first video.
To read a little bit of what he wrote. He wrote, quote, Jerome Powell of the Fed, who is always too late and wrong, he said in all caps, yesterday issued a report which was another and typical complete mess. He went on to say that Powell's termination could not come fast enough. Now, as you mentioned, John, this comes just a day after Jerome Powell spoke in Chicago yesterday and gave his starkest warning yet of the potential economic fallout of President Donald Trump's tariff policies. He said essentially that he believed tariffs would create a, quote, challenging scenario for the central bank, and really putting some of their two main goals, which is, of course, having stable inflation and also a healthy labor market, at odds. Now, just to give you a step back and give you a little more insight into the relationship between the president and Jerome Powell, it's one that has always been tense and fraught going back years now. And the president has repeatedly, and not just in this term, but also in his first term, urged the Fed to cut rates. But we're seeing that even more so now, of course, because of the economic concerns regarding some of the president's trade policies and tariff policies. Now, one thing that is clear is that the Fed is supposed to operate independently of politics, something Powell reiterated yesterday. But we also know that the president has tried to issue an executive order to take more control over the central bank. And there's also concerns that perhaps the president could move to try and oust Jerome Powell before his term is up in May of 2026. All to say, we are seeing this fight really play out more publicly. I would anticipate this isn't the end of what we'll be hearing from the president regarding how Powell is running the Fed.
Yeah, it does not seem the president liked what Jerome Powell had to say yesterday. The president of the United States went directly after Fed Chair Jerome Powell, saying his termination cannot come fast enough. My question to you, our question to you this morning, is a simple legal one, although I'm not sure there's a simple legal answer.
Is there ever?
Can the president terminate the Fed chair?
Well, the simple legal answer, John, is we don't know for sure. If you look at the state of law as it exists at this moment here, as we sit in April 2025, the answer is no. And that's because of a U.S. Supreme Court case, goes back to 1935, called Humphrey's Executor, which says in these multi-member agencies, these independent agencies like the FTC, the SEC, and here the Fed, the president can only remove those members for cause, meaning if the person has done a horrible job, has been absent, that kind of thing. And so that would protect the Fed chair. However, there has been a growing movement by this administration and by prior administrations to challenge that law and to say that essentially, no, it's up to the president if he wants to fire these people. And there's no limitations on why he could fire them. And John, really important to note, if the president does fire Chairman Powell, there will be a lawsuit. Obviously, the stakes will be very high. But that may not be the case that decides this, because there's another case involving the firing of other board members of other boards of the FTC and the National Merit Protection Board that's already up at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not decided yet whether they'll take it, but that one's way ahead of this potential case in terms of the procedure here. But the stakes here are huge. I think it's only a matter of time before one of these cases reaches the Supreme Court, and that'll tell us exactly how much power the president has to fire the Fed chair and other independent appointees within the executive branch.
I mean, I feel like we have to use Boasberg's words against you when it comes to saying that it hasn't been legally tested. I'm going to say none of their responses has been satisfactory. That is not a satisfactory response, Ellie. We need it to be cut and dry. Yes or no?
I wish I could give you a yes or no, Kate. It would be irresponsible for me. What I will say is right now, the answer is no, we can't fire him, but that could change. How about that?
Yeah, it only had one complication is there are people who think that even if the Supreme Court steps in and rules on the FTC thing.
Was this the thing you were talking about, the definition of an agency?
They may try to have a carve out for the Fed. I mean, it's even uncertain on top of its uncertainty here, Ellie. But it really makes it interesting when the president goes after the Fed chair so publicly. Ellie Holding, counselor, thank you.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed is President Trump's style. So I'm about to give you a subjective opinion. Take it for what it's worth. This is just my observations and how I read the situation. Trump will be very what appears to be rude from the outside often. He speaks directly and he'll say mean things about people. He'll say he thinks they're stupid. He commonly refers to President Biden as being a terrible president. Now, it's probably objectively true. I don't know a whole lot of people that are arguing with the fact that, especially at the end of Biden's presidency, he wasn't doing a whole lot. You can make the argument that the economy was good or things were good when Biden was president. I don't think you can make it very effectively, but you can try. It's very hard to give Biden the credit for how that happened. Okay. So that's an example. Trump will come out and just say, yeah, I think Biden was terrible. He'll say that about other cabinet members. He'll say that about other people. He's been saying this about Powell. And we're going to hear some of the stuff that he has to say about Powell very soon. You'll also hear President Trump say this about people like President Zelensky or President Putin. When they don't respond the way he was hoping that they would, he will criticize them. When they do respond the way that he was hoping they would, he will praise their behavior. And now on the outside looking in, what this looks like is that the president is wishy-washy. And that's one of the things that I'll hear all the time. And I'm not here to defend the president being wishy-washy or not. I'm here to defend you and the way you're looking at the situation so that you can grow your wealth the best way possible. It's not always that he's wishy-washy. He's changing how he talks based on what the other side did. Is this a really mature way to handle yourself? Probably not. I don't think anybody would say that it is. I just don't think he cares. He's usually sending a message to the person through the media for what he wants. So we're going to hear that he talks about Jerome Powell. And if you understand how to speak Trumpanese, it's not always like this when he's talking. You've got to understand what he's really trying to say, what he's being said. You won't lose your mind feeling like we're going back and forth and it's chaotic and you don't know what's happening. I see in his communication pattern order. I kind of understand, at least I think I do, what he's getting at. I see what's being said in between the words. So as we listen to these videos, keep an eye out for how he does things. You can tell what he wants the other side to do by the way he speaks about them. All right, let's get into our next video here. We'll see for ourselves what this looks like.
Holy Weekend live picture there at the Vatican, a gorgeous live now look at St. Peter's Basilica. In the meantime, though, we want to dive into some of these economic headlines. We're going to do that with our friend there at the American Institute for Economic Research, Dave Hebert. He joins me. David, thanks for being with us here. You've been following this extremely closely. I want to start with the tariff deal making that is ongoing. And, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you skeptical of what the president is proffering? We keep hearing that all these talks, all these calls with Mexico, with Italy, with the European Union, with Japan, that they're going well and they're productive. What's the strategy here?
I think you ask a great question. And frankly, it's very difficult to pin down exactly what the strategy is with respect to these tariffs. On the one hand, we get Peter Navarro saying that we're going to raise $600 billion in revenue every year. But then other Trump officials are saying we're using these as a negotiation tactic to get to zero tariffs. Now, it doesn't take an economist to...
All right, you're probably about to hear commentary that they don't know what they're doing. They're all over the place. They're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. You're welcome to interpret it that way if you actually think what's going on. Here's how I interpret it. We increased the tariffs on other countries, and we said, come negotiate with us. To the countries that came to negotiate, we said, all right, we're going to pause these tariffs for 90 days. To the countries that did not come to negotiate, we said, screw you, you're going to get the tariffs. Okay? You make your move. You see what the opponent does. Then you adjust. This is common in jiu-jitsu. This is common in any sport you ever play. It's a normal thing. You also don't always tell the other team exactly what you're going to do. You say what you intend to do, and sometimes you try to throw them off. Now, here's what's happening specifically. He said, come to the negotiating table and I won't tariff you. And he backed off. He's also said what two different outcomes could be. And this is the point I want to make to all the real estate investors out there. If the countries don't come negotiate, because President Trump understands he can't control what they do. He doesn't know what they're going to do. He can only adapt to what they do. If they don't come negotiate, well, fine. We're going to put a tariff on him. We're going to make goods in America. He's going to come up with some incentive plan to get manufacturing done here. We're going to sell the stuff over there. That's going to make the country money. We can lower our income taxes. There's a win. If they do play ball with us, if they say, okay, we'll drop the tariffs that we have on you, fine. We'll drop the ones that we just put on you and now it's even. And now we can sell more stuff over there without the tariffs hurting, but we're not going to be collecting revenue from what they sell to us. So we don't actually drop the income tax, but our GDP does go up because we can sell more things to other countries. Both of those paths are a win in their own right. There's downsides and there's upsides, but it's overall, it looks to be an economic win if we can either get tariffs dropped on us, or if not, if we can collect money from tariffs from what we buy. That's how I'm looking at it. The president doesn't know what's going to happen. No one in his cabinet knows what's going to happen. Nobody can predict the future, but you have a plan for either way. I do this in real estate investing all the time. I'm going to buy this house and I'm going to flip it. If it turns out that rents went up more than I thought they were, or the budget went up higher in the flip than I thought, and I'm not going to make a very good return, or it looks like the area is a better area than I thought when I bought it, I keep it as a rental. And I do the BRRRR strategy. If it turns out, ooh, this is going to be harder to rent than I thought, or I buy a property, I fix it up, I make it a short-term rental, and then the numbers aren't as good as I thought, maybe I sell it. There's a win in either side, but only a fool boxes themselves in and gives them one option. Because if your opponent understands that that's what you're doing, they have all of the right in the world to stop you from executing the plan that you just told them that you were going to execute. And it blows my mind how many of the people that we listen to on the news like this that either are too dumb to understand that's what's happening, or they're not dumb. They know that's what's happening, but they're dishonest and they report the news as if this is chaos and America has no idea what we're doing, instead of it being an actual strategy.
To tell you that if you have no tariffs, you're going to have no tariff revenue. Then we hear that we're going to be reshoring manufacturing jobs, but then Lutnick just said that those jobs are going to be automated and that the only jobs that will be created are going to be in HVAC and machine maintenance. So it's really difficult to pin down exactly what this administration is trying to do with these tariffs. And I think that, combined with the capricious and frankly, daily changes in what tariff rates are going to be, is causing significant uncertainty in markets. And this is starting to boil over. The Philadelphia Fed just released their manufacturing report today, and to the surprise of almost no one, it was resoundingly negative.
So, David, you heard there, I was reading that post on Truth Social. The president is saying we are getting rich on tariffs as we speak here. Have we seen any data as far as tariff revenue that has come in since he, on April 2nd, kind of announced that Liberation Day was at hand, and then a week later issued a 90-day pause? Have we seen any material positive benefit in revenue from the tariffs yet?
Not that I've seen. And recall again that we're projecting, at least from Navarro, that this will make.
All right, let's take a quick break to get some of these questions, because you guys are giving amazing comments and I don't want them to stop. So keep these coming. Travar Dixon, do you think interest rates will come down in 2025? I don't know, but I think yes. Later, much later. I think they're going up first. I think the only reason I think they will come down, and this is why I'm giving you my thoughts, because you may disagree with it, so then you can make a bet in the other direction. But from what I've seen, it looks like we're playing every single hand we get well. I know a lot of people disagree with me and they just get angry that I say it. I actually hurts my heart a little bit that so many people are mad at me for having this opinion. I just can't help but notice it. a lot of the tariff stuff is not just for economic trade wars, though that's a big part of it. It's for other political negotiations. Like countries were dumping their worst criminals out of their jails and into America. It's like one of the ways that El Salvador was able to fix their country was getting some of the people that they couldn't keep in prison out of their country. A lot of them came here. We don't want that anymore. We put a tariff on that country. We say, we'll only take it away if you take back the criminals and you guys house them, not us. Saves the American taxpayer a lot of money. That's pretty smart. We're winning at that. Closing up the southern border didn't take very long for us to accomplish that. A lot of things were done in the first 100 days. And I tend to think that not just President Trump, I don't know that he's the most intelligent guy in the world. I don't know him. The people he has around him seem to be pretty smart. They're coming up with some really good ideas. And I think that they will figure out a way to get interest rates down, because I've heard him say that's how you get an economy good. I want rates low. And I've learned when he says something, pay attention, because he's going to try to do it. That's a good question, though. Salvador says, even if Powell lowers rates, the 10-year treasury won't go down. Just look at what happened when Powell lowered rates before. Rates went down a little leading up to the cut, but rates went up afterwards. Travar, do you feel it's a good time to buy at this time with interest rates being so high? Just because it's harder to cash flow at these rates. Yeah, it's harder to cash flow at these rates. And if rates go down, prices will go up. We're going to have the same problem. The easy cash flow days are pretty much gone. That's why I wrote the book Better Than Cash Flow. So if you guys want, I highly recommend you go check out my new book, Better Than Cash Flow, available on Amazon. You can get it very cheap on Kindle, or you can pay a little bit more. You could get a paperback version. And if you do get it, make sure that you take a picture and tag me in it on Instagram so that I can share it with other people. And Salvador says, by the way, it was nice meeting you in Cancun. Haha. Thank you for that, Salvador. Appreciate you. All right. We had more comments. Let me find these suckers. Kirsten says, thank you for going live so often. I appreciate the breakdown of what's going on. Travon says, Travar, I've been debating transitioning to the stock market to spread my assets out, and I feel it's a good time to transition while stocks are on sale this time. Yeah, they might go down more, though. I wouldn't be surprised if we have more problems in the stock market, because things usually get worse before they get better. Jennifer says, pivoting accordingly. I like hearing that. That's exactly why we do this. Salvador says, David, it's not 5D chess. If he really did his homework on tariffs, why did he put tariffs on Bangladesh and islands that are not inhabited by people? This is a great question. This is a person who's asking the right questions. But Salvador, you sound like you've already made up your mind before you got the answer to your question. That's a flaw. So you're saying it's not 5D chess, and then you're giving us the reason why you believe that, because he put tariffs on Bangladesh and islands that aren't even inhabited by people. There's a reason why, and they've said it. They came out and said, if we don't put tariffs on a certain island, like Bangladesh or the island with penguins, then the companies we do put tariffs on, like China, will just move their manufacturing plants to those islands, pay that country to be able to manufacture there, and they're poor, so they can pay them peanuts, and they'll ship it from Bangladesh. We have to put a tariff on everyone to stop all the holes so that our competition won't sneak their way out of it. And if I know this, then the information is out there for other people to know. All that I ask y'all is that you open your minds and you don't assume that you already have the answer because you don't like the president. It's going to hurt yourself if you make up your minds before you get all the information.
Make $600 billion per year.
Yeah.
Now, that seems a bit extreme. The CBO in December released figures saying about $270 billion. But let's put that into context real quick. Even at $600 billion, that's how much money Congress spends every single month. Now, look, it's great to get 1 month's income, but that's not going to move the needle on our fiscal health. It's not going to even pay off the $1.7 trillion in deficit spending that we're going to do today. Frankly, I don't think we need just Elon Musk in the White House. I think we need Dave Ramsey to wrangle in and get this stuff actually squared away.
Okay, so on to Jerome Powell here. He was speaking just yesterday at the Economic Club of Chicago. And we showed our viewers a lot of this yesterday. And he was quite forthcoming and quite frank about how the tariff regime may, heighten inflationary pressures, that the long-term inflation may persist or get worse because of the tariffs. He said that there to the Economic Club of Chicago. I would imagine that the president did not like that. did not like that Powell said that here. And you saw in that Truth Social post, he said, Powell's termination cannot come soon enough. He was asked about that statement in the Oval Office today. He said, oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. Now, Powell's term is...
This is an example of when the president says something. Sometimes he means it. Other times he's telling Powell, if you don't do what I say, I'll have you out of there. That's a message for Powell. It's not a message for the American people.
Not up until May of 2026. Can a president fire a Fed chair?
So look, we don't really have precedent to say objectively one way or another. We do have a lot of Supreme Court cases, though, that suggest that it would be incredibly difficult for a president to unilaterally fire a Fed chair for political reasons.
Does this guy have a collection of Beanie Babies behind him on that desk? First question. Are those Beanie Babies? Second, if he does, is that better or worse than my collection of tiny like bobblehead dolls that are behind mine as I'm making fun of him?
It would have to be for gross negligence, misconduct, things like that. But really, I think what Jerome Powell was speaking to was exactly what is within his purview. His mandate is to combat inflation or to promote price stability and to promote full employment. Well, when you have a capricious president changing fiscal policy through tariffs every single day, I mean, if we look at the history here, President Trump has changed tariff policy 27 times since taking office. Yeah. That's a lot. And so when you have a lot of uncertainty in exactly what the executive is going to be doing, Jerome Powell can't come in and try to lower inflation. Otherwise, he's going to risk kicking off a serious recession if he does it at a time when the president raises tariffs. So this is a really tough spot for Jerome Powell. And I'm not surprised that he said what he said. And I'm also not surprised that President Trump wants to see lower interest rates. We do have a lot of Treasury bonds coming due in November. This is going to be a problem.
So Powell also acknowledged that, Smoot-Hawley of almost 100 years ago, right now, our tariff atmosphere, the average weighted tariff on the country is more than that. It's more than Smoot-Hawley right now. Lastly, though, on the interest rates, you heard there in the president's post on Truth Social that the European Central Bank keeps cutting interest rates. He wants Powell to cut interest rates right now. Why won't Powell do that? I mean, Powell doesn't have to listen, but why won't Powell cut rates? He's held them steady the last two meetings. What's stopping him from cutting them?
So if Powell were to cut rates, what that would do is put upward pressure on markets and create sort of a boom condition. Now, look, this is not a bad thing, but when we're also trying to lower inflation, remember, the Fed wants to get to 2%, and the latest figures.
All right, abrupt ending there. Now let's see what Fox has to say about similar information. All right, this is a common negotiation strategy. It's good for everyone to know this if you don't know how this game gets played. It'll really help you know how to interpret a lot of what you see President Trump saying that might be frustrating you, or a lot of what he's saying that might just confuse you. We wanted China to come to the negotiation table with us and get rid of the tariffs. And we basically hurt them in the process. We put tariffs on them and we knowing it's going to hurt their economy. China doesn't like to get bullied. So they responded by saying, we're going to sell a bunch of your treasuries to drive your interest rates up. And we are going to put tariffs on you for the stuff you sell here, which is mostly, I think, airplanes and like Hollywood movies. Now, they know at some point they're going to have to come negotiate with us because it's hurting them more than it's hurting us, according to most experts. But they don't want to do that right away. So what do? They go to other countries and they try to form an alliance. And they're like, look, can we get you to agree to work with us and not negotiate with America? Because if we got to go negotiate with America by ourselves, we don't have a lot of leverage. But if we have a bunch of other countries with us, if we've got a whole union, well, we got a lot more power when we go to negotiate with America. They're stalling to improve their position. The same thing happens in real estate. You find a house that you really like. It's a great deal, or you want to live in it. You love it. You want to buy it. You write an offer right away. The listing agent doesn't just accept your offer, not if they're good. They go to the other buyers that have written offers, and they say, hey, are you interested in buying this house? Because I already have an offer. Can you beat this one? They use your offer to shop to the other buyers to try to get a better deal. And then they come back to you and they go, well, now if you want it, this is the price because someone wants to pay more. The stalling tactic is what they use. And when I was in production selling houses myself all the time, I would stall to get a better deal for my clients and shop the offer. And when I wrote an offer for my buyers, I would not let them stall. I'd say, here's the price we're going to pay for your house. I need an answer in 6 hours. If you don't give me an answer in 6 hours, we're coming back with a lower offer. Well, why would you do that? Because I think you're going to shop it. Well, we're not going to shop it. Then you got 6 hours. You don't give me an answer in six hours. I've already told my clients that you're not taking them serious. We will write a lower offer, and we will also go write offers on other houses. The clock is ticking. Let me know. That was my strategy because I knew they were going to shop me, right? So we would be stupid and foolish to think that China's not doing the same thing to us right now in these negotiations. He doesn't want to pick up the phone and call to make a deal because they're not in enough pain yet. The deal becomes a lot better if China's in dire straits and they're like desperate. They got to get that house sold. Than when they first put it on the market and they're not feeling pain yet. Do you think that Xi Jinping's hand is really that small? Or did somebody edit this to make him look bad? Because Trump's supposed to be the one with small hands. But that looks like a baby hand.
talks have been ongoing this week. So how soon do we want this deal done? I think, in your opinion, real quick before I move on.
Well, the Ukraine peace deal is more urgent. People are dying. President Trump and Vice President Vance are really focused on it. The Chinese could help. That's the irony here. They want to pretend like they're going to help us with the Ukraine ceasefire. But on the ground, if these are not volunteers, if these are real live Chinese troops, then this is one of the biggest setbacks in U.S.-China relations in 50 years.
Right.
It's a betrayal.
Absolutely. Michael, thank you so much for being with me.
All right, let's get to some of the questions there, and apologies for losing audio for a minute there. Asset Addict, very nice gentleman, I'm assuming. David, I'm an economist with 27 years of experience in international trade. I can't tell if you're blind, ignorant, or trying to be a clown. Asset Addict is probably a very wealthy man. What's your rationale here? Let's hear something in an intelligent argument. Lisa says, keep it up, David. Thank you for expressing what's been on my mind lately. Well, thank you, Lisa. Sinid, I agree with you, Salvador. That sounded a lot like mental gymnastics. Jennifer LaForge says he's holding out for those Beanie Babies to be worth big bucks. Cynthia says, in newsflash, Powell doesn't work for Trump. Britt says Trump is brilliant. Majority of journalists just can't accept that he is likely smarter than they are. Gabe Nagy says choose two of those maybe. And Gabe says, I kind of think David now lives in a Fox News bubble. I was afraid somebody would say that, which is why we started off with a CNN video. But when somebody has the hatred for Trump, it's very hard to think objectively. Asset says Trump is damaging the economy of the USA. Just ask your local furniture stores. Gabe says, Britt, any given time, I will do the same IQ test as Trump and we'll see how smart he is. Asset Addict says, David, just look around you. How many things will you now have to pay 145 to 245% more because they're made in China? These tariffs are already being paid by importers. I don't know that anyone argues with that fact. It's more that doesn't take very much to see. That's kind of like what the 5-year-old recognizes. Oh, hey, things are going to be more expensive, so it's bad. But they don't notice that we don't make things here. And so we become dependent on buying things from them because they make it cheaper. That's kind of the whole point. And if you can't see past just more expensive equals bad, I don't know that I'm the one who's the clown. What else we got here? Once again, I'm in international trade. Believe me, it's already happening. Shipments are being sent to countries like Australia. Then paperwork and labels are being changed to avoid tariffs. Probably wouldn't deny that. There's probably what's going on. That's kind of the point that President Trump has been making. And a lot of other economists that are honest have been making. China plays dirty. They're cheating. They're ripping us off. You're giving us evidence, Asset Addict, of cheating as you're complaining that we are taking them on for cheating. You're also talking about how you're an expert in international trade and I am ignorant and because we're tariffing China, but China's been tariffing us. Is everyone as mad about that? Are we stuck on the fact that this makes things more expensive for us in the short term and we're not paying attention to the fact that we sell treasuries to countries like China who gives us money? We have to take on debt, which we pay them with interest. We then use the money we borrowed from them to buy the things that they made and they sell to us. So they make money from lending us money that we gave them when we bought their stuff, and they make money from us buying their stuff. They're making it hand over fist. We're just taking on debt so that people can have cheaper things. And it feels like no matter how many times you make that point, the human beings that want something cheap and can't think about anything else just keep pounding. I want it cheap. I want it cheap. And they can only see the one side of the coin. Let's call it the tail side. They can only see that this is going to be more expensive. They can't see how dangerous it is that we become dependent on somebody else to take care of us. And as tensions are increasing in the Middle East, tensions are increasing with Russia and Ukraine, tensions are increasing with China and Taiwan. All of our allies in these areas Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan are being threatened by other countries, which would make them our enemies, are the same countries that we get our oil and our imports from. I don't think you need to be playing 5D chess to see how stupid that is. And we finally have an administration that says, hey, this is not wise. Let's break our dependency on cheap labor that's made by slave labor, basically. It's not moral to be doing it anyways. And our own citizens are angry at our administration for taking these steps to make us more independent so that we don't get our butt kicked in a war where they stop sending us medicine and parts for our military equipment because we keep importing it from over there. It's not that I don't know things will get more expensive. It's that I know more than just that, which is what we're trying to report on here. Guitar says Trump can fire Powell, another mouthpiece for the Crump bankster cabal will step up to do their bidding. Wow, that's a lot of big words. Francisco Santana says, does Mr. Greene know that he is alive? Yeah, I'm sorry that we lost audio there. Appreciate that. Salvador says, David is correct. We should all try to bring it down a bit. Not only is some of the trade with China unfair, just think about our social media companies not being allowed to do business in China. Asset Addict says, David, have you ever done business in China, imported in the USA, or even traveled to China at any point in your life? I don't know that that has anything to do, traveling to China, with understanding that we're trying to manufacture things in America so that we're not dependent on the Chinese. I guess I have met Robert Kiyosaki, but you can read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and understand it without having met Robert Kiyosaki. All right, let's see what the next video that we have here is.
Happening now, Fed Chair Jerome Powell giving his starkest warnings yet when it comes to the economic impact of President Trump's tariffs. We are listening in on that. We're going to bring you some more of those key details. Fair to say, though, Wall Street understandably keeping a very close eye on this. Joining me now, business journalist and the host of Public Radio's Full Disclosure, Robin Farzad. Robin, good to have you here. So just a little bit of what we have heard so far from Chair Powell talking about the level of tariff increases he said is significantly larger than what's anticipated, and the economic effects will be too. He says that includes higher inflation and slower growth. These are stark comments. They're very direct comments, especially coming from Jerome Powell.
Yeah, and it throws a monkey wrench kind of into his dual mandate of keep inflation under control and keep unemployment low. So what do you do if it's an exogenous shock? I mean, the playbook says you could go back to 1930 and look at the Smoot-Hawley tariff, and that was only 17 years after the Federal Reserve was founded. So you only have so much of a precedent to go on. Do you hike? Do you keep rates where they are right now? Do you give into the White House and slash rates? It is a multi-trillion-dollar question.
Multi-trillion-dollar question. I mean, what more do you need to hear from him? What more do you think Wall Street and investors are listening for? Because those comments off the top are a lot.
Right. So if Wall Street at this point, are you rooting for bad news or good news? We're still creating a good amount of jobs, 5 years after the onset of this pandemic and this financial crisis. Remember, unemployment shot up to the teens. So prices are still a concern. There are still inflationary pressures across the economy. And if suddenly this gives cloud cover to a lot of companies preemptively, car makers, apparel makers, Walmart, Target, to go out and hike prices just purely in anticipation of inflation, and also the crackdown on immigration is on the margin inflationary. It's not going to free his hand to cut rates the way many people in MAGA and the White House and traders on Wall Street are romancing.
Right. There's also, leading into these comments, you have the World Trade Organization now forecasting that the tariffs from President Trump and that resulting fallout are going to sharply reduce not only global, but U.S. economic growth. And they've said to expect the expectations for global trade this year have, quote, deteriorated sharply. Put that in perspective. The fact that it's deteriorated sharply, I mean, how quickly do we really start to feel this?
You'll feel it. I mean, the perception and the shock just from a couple of weeks ago where he came out with that poster. But what's interesting to me is when you see this, it's not like Trump in the Oval Office is going to call in his Treasury Secretary. It's like, wait, did you just see what the World Trade Organization said? No, we can't possibly crash the global economy. He's happy to play with fire. As your prior correspondent was saying with the rule of law and the judicial system and the kind of the low-key constitutional crisis we have here. So that has to worry bankers, whether you're talking about the WTO, the IMF, the Federal Reserve, that you have a person here who believes these things work, believes in his methodology going back to the 80s that tariffs are good and we need to protect ourselves and cover our bases. And there's no evidence to prove that it actually works in real multi-trillion-dollar reality.
And who often puts pressure, right, at least through social media, on the Federal Reserve, telling the Federal Reserve, interestingly, to stop playing politics and basically do what President Trump wants. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction is to these comments once Jerome Powell finishes speaking. Robin, we have to leave it there, but great to talk to you.
I'm curious for the comments that are coming in about tariffs equal inflation and it's bad. And it's just that, like, you can only look at what's right in front of your face. Is it that you're not listening, or is it that you really haven't heard that our administration has said we want reciprocity? We'll only tariff you if you tariff us. For too long, it's been a one-way road. It's not fair. We've moved jobs out of America. We need those jobs right now. Our economy is in a bad place. We are slipping into a recession. We have massive debt. We don't have any industry other than tech for the most part at an international level. We don't import oil to other countries. We don't send goods out to other countries. We have some tourism, and we have people that spend a lot of money. We have a consumer base. And we just want you to drop the tariffs that you're putting on us. That's all. Do that. We're good. You don't, we'll put them on you. Is this something that I'm the only person who's hearing it? Or are they just not listening when we're saying that we don't want to put tariffs on other countries? We are willing to put tariffs on other countries if they don't drop theirs on us. What we want is for them to drop theirs.
Thank you. Moments ago, Fed Chair Jerome Powell giving his starkest warning yet on President Trump's tariffs.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. The inflationary effects could also be more persistent.
Wall Street clearly not a fan of this new message. Joining us now to discuss, CNN business editor at large Richard Quest, who's actually live this hour at the New York International Auto Show. I imagine there's a little bit of chatter about this there too. So Powell here said the public's going to pay for these tariffs, and basically said, brace yourself, there's some pain coming our way.
Yes, and although he had said this before, just a few weeks ago, he sort of alluded to it and made some tangential reference. This time it was full throttle. Anybody who's used to Fed speak knew exactly what Powell was saying, that inflation is going to go up. The worry is that that inflation, once it arrives, will be persistent on top of that which is already in the system. And, you know, you go 1 + 1 + 1 equals, it means that the Fed won't be able to lower interest rates, because what the Fed chair said is that the dual mandate, full employment, price stability, are now about to go into conflict. They're going to have higher inflation, and that's going to mean higher interest rates for a longer period. How much longer, how high, what they're going to do.
So how do we get economic employment if we don't have manufacturing? Let me know in the comments if you guys think that there's something that the administration is missing when it comes to how to get people working here. It's not a secret. I don't think you need to be brilliant to understand that AI is going to take over a ton of software development, possibly all of it. And AI is going to remove a ton of tech jobs, which has been what has been driving the American economy. If you look at it from a high level, you had a small number of people making a buttload of money, making technological improvements and software and advances that we then sell to other countries and sell to American businesses. And then those people made a ton of money, employed a lot of people at super, super high salaries, and paid a lot in corporate taxes. That money was then dispersed to all the people that didn't make money or didn't work at all, and it kept everybody afloat. As we lose this thing where all the money's come from, we're in big, big trouble, because there's nowhere for the money to trickle down to the people that are not producing anything. So what we have to do is move the money from the big companies to the manufacturing jobs where the people that don't make a ton of money are, so that they can support themselves and the country can be stabilized, not super, super polarized. if you look at it from a high level, this makes a lot of sense. If the Fed wants to be able to create economic stability, what are they going to do to lower unemployment when all of the low-paying jobs have been outsourced to other countries so that we can get cheap things?
No one knows because it's so uncertain. But this is not the canary in the mine. This is actually the man walking in front with a red flag.
The red flag, but when it comes from Jerome Powell, right, it does hold a certain significance for him to be that direct.
US retail sales jumped 1.4% in March, the largest monthly gain in more than 2 years. But some economists believe the surge may have been fueled by consumers rushing to buy in an effort to beat the likely higher prices that will result from the tariffs. California is suing the administration over those levies. Governor Gavin Newsom argues the president doesn't have the authority to unilaterally impose them on Canada, Mexico, and China, the state's 3 largest trading partners. Let's go beyond those numbers now. CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkovich joins us. Jerome Powell has said some of these things before, hasn't he? But there felt like more urgency to them. That was probably expected. But just explain why the numbers seem quite positive that we're getting on the economy right now with this background.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start on what Jerome Powell just said. And as you note, he has said some of this before, but I think he's taken this a step further. And he has said that he expects higher inflation, slower economic growth. And with that, he also expects that unemployment may rise. That is something called stagflation. And that is something that the Federal Reserve has a really tough time with because they can only sort of tackle one of those 3 things at only one of those 3 things at once. They can't do it all at the same time. So markets right now, you can see, are reacting to this. You see the NASDAQ down more than 3%. You have the Dow down over here more than 600 points. And this all really started after Jerome Powell started speaking. Yes, markets were rattled because of some news with NVIDIA saying that the U.S. government had put new restrictions over the exporting of their chips. So tech stocks were already a little bit shaky. And now you have this from Jerome Powell essentially saying that tariffs are going to make it harder for the Federal Reserve to do its job. Listen to what he just said.
Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to make certain that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. As we act to meet that obligation, we will balance our maximum employment and price stability mandates, keeping in mind that without price stability, we cannot achieve the long periods of strong labor market conditions that benefit all Americans. We may find ourselves in the challenging scenario in which our dual mandate goals are in tension.
And now he said right there that the dual mandate goals will be in tension. That is full employment and that is keeping prices stable for Americans. So he said we're not there yet, but that is what may be coming because of the uncertainty around these tariffs. Also, as you mentioned, Max, retail sales came in today. They were very strong, but that was to be anticipated because economists were predicting that U.S. consumers were going to start buying a lot of things and big ticket items ahead of these tariffs coming into effect. That, I believe, that is actually car retail sales for cars up 5.3% in just the month of March. We know that Ford Motor Company said that they saw a dramatic increase in people buying cars in the month of March, trying to beat those 25% tariffs on both foreign cars and foreign car parts. 2 other things to keep in mind: furniture and clothing. The U.S. imports a lot from Asian countries, including China, which is currently hit with that 145% tariff. So those are 2 industries to keep an eye on. But I think really the takeaway, Max, from what Jerome Powell is saying is that the economy as it stands right now is pretty solid. But because of the uncertainty with tariffs, that's where we could run into some problems. And he, in his speech today, is forecasting that, Max.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, wasn't it, Vanessa? Thank you so much for that. I want to ask you, we were hearing earlier about the very genuine fear now of stagflation. It's quite a complex thing, isn't it? But this is something that economists are now warning of, and that's kind of a worst case scenario, isn't it, for the markets?
Well, it's a worst case scenario because there isn't an effective monetary policy tool to fight that. And I think that's what Jay Powell was speaking to today. It's a bit of a conundrum because if you're going to have rising prices and you want to tamp that down, you want to have restrictive policy. But with those rising prices, if you have slowing economic growth, then you'd like to stimulate that. So you find yourself, between a rock and a hard place. And I think Jay Powell was trying to get that message across this afternoon. And I not a prediction that we're heading there, but certainly it's all dependent on the duration of this trade war. If in fact we start to hear about some deals being cut on a bilateral basis over the next couple of days or weeks, I certainly think that could turn the tide in terms of both sentiment and the magnitude of the inflationary pressure that we'd see with this. If in fact we're still talking about the same level of tariffs a month from now, I would certainly say a lot of economic damage that has already been done caused by this uncertainty will physically be done by a pullback in spending and certainly a slowdown in hiring and a slowdown in economic growth.
Solid point there. It could get worse. It could get expensive. That's why we're making this content right now. We don't want you to panic, but we don't want to be ignorant either. There's a very good chance that if China doesn't come renegotiate and we get into this siege warfare that I've talked about on other videos, things will become more expensive. We won't be buying as much stuff, and you can get more slowdown in the economy, but it's for a bigger purpose. It's to try to get them to drop the tariffs on us and to try to get them to stop doing underhanded things. All right, let's get into another video. Thank you guys for joining. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to the David Greene Show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Shelby, you have a seat today. I know. Stole it. Glad to see it. Two quick ones on TikTok. First, is the president expecting to extend the TikTok ban that's now June 19th if China doesn't come to the table in time?
Well, June 19th is a long ways away, obviously. I think it's 2 months away. 2 months is a long time in the Trump administration, as you have all seen. We work at Trump speed around here. We get a lot done. So definitely don't want to get ahead. The vice president continues to lead these negotiations and talks. The president's involved and they're ongoing.
And then the president previously said he'd consider reducing tariffs on China in order to get a TikTok deal done. Is that option still on the table?
Look, the president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country, except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America. Sure.
On tariffs, yesterday in the Oval Office.
Which outlet are you with?
The Canadian Public Broadcaster.
Oh, nice to see you.
Thank you. Yesterday in the Oval Office, President Trump suggested that there could be some help for automakers. I'm wondering what that looks like. Is it tariff relief on the 25% tariffs that are in place right now, or the new tariffs that are coming up in May on auto parts? And a second on Canada, if I may. President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office, but they see him almost every day. But the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. As for autos and auto parts, I don't have anything to read out for you there, but I think the point the president was making is flexibility, and he has flexibility when it comes to negotiations and talks. But ultimately, his goal in his fair trade deals that he is pursuing with many countries around the world is to put the American worker first. And we had automakers and auto workers here at the White House on Liberation Day who believe in this president and his negotiating ability to put them first and to bring those jobs back to the United States of America. And the president's been very clear about that in his conversations with.
All right, we got some comments, I think, that are actually becoming a little more intelligent here. I want to share with people. Sal says, one of my best friends is a professor at the Naval Postgraduate School, and he's told me how weak new recruits are at suffering through basic training. That is a result that's not unique to America. That will happen anytime in any situation. You have people that grew up in a world that was softer. When you are not exposed to difficulty, difficult things become very hard for you. This is one of the problems with America that we have to fix. And Asset Attic actually made a point here about who's going to do the jobs. He says, please explain how Americans will gain the skills that took the Chinese decades to manufacture. Look at a furniture manufacturer in China and then one in North Carolina. The U.S. is light years behind. That's because we've become soft. That is the problem. That this is actually the point. We have gotten used to getting things from other countries, and we don't show up with a pursuit of excellence like they are in China. He then goes on to say, you can't even find people to do furniture repair in the U.S. Forget building. It's a lost skill. Agreed. That needs to change. We need young people that are not unable to suffer through hard things at basic training because they're so soft. We need workers that are able to go to work and put in a hard day's work and do something well and take some pride in what they did and gain skills that will help them put together bigger things than just furniture. You learn how to put together a chair. You learn how to put together a table. You learn how to put together a car. You learn how to put together a house. We build better houses, or we actually start building things that we sell to other countries. That's what we have to change about the entire direction of the United States. Now, when it comes to who's going to do these jobs, learning to build furniture takes time and hands-on experience. Solid foundational skills take 2 years. Mastery takes at least 5 years. Also, we just don't have the tech. That's why the president has been saying he's trying to get investment from other countries into America to develop the tech. Now, last comment he made was, it's like quitting your only job without having one lined up or having money. There was a better way to do this. I don't, maybe, but how many Americans have just taken it upon themselves to go do manual labor when we go into a recession? We need more housing. Do you see people lining up wanting to frame homes? Do you see people lining up wanting to do blue collar work? We have a sense of hopelessness that has taken over our country because our skills have atrophied because we shipped it overseas. Those countries are gaining the wealth and the skills and the autonomy and the confidence, and they're coming after our lunch. We need to turn that around. You got to get someone in the weight room before they're going to get stronger. And if we've had years to do this ourselves and we haven't done it, we need some kind of catalyst to make this happen. It has to happen in the military. It has to happen in manufacturing. It has to happen in the economy. And what I want is for everyone to pick up that American flag and run in the same direction as a united country. Not some people to say, I'm going to have a good attitude and I'm going to do this, and the rest of them to sit there and do nothing, but then benefit from the hard work of everyone else. I want everybody pulling in the same direction on the team. Now, I don't know why I'm being asked this, but if you're asking, what are we going to do with workers because no one wants to work, I would imagine, I'm now speculating, but I would imagine that if we have factories and everyone refuses to work in them, we'll bring people over on a work visa from China that are unemployed. And we'll say, you can come live in America on a work visa and you can get integrated into our culture and you can work here and pay taxes to us instead of to them. We can start moving some of the skill of the people that live in China into America and we can start benefiting from it. And I'm not that smart. If I can think of this idea, I am sure the country's current leaders can do the same thing. All right, let's get back to the video here.
With the automakers as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. One on Ukraine and one on China. On Ukraine, this past weekend, Zelensky offered an invitation to President Trump, extending an offer for him to visit Ukraine. Just wondering if there's any update on that. Has Trump seen that offer and what he's thinking about?
I don't know. Actually, I haven't talked to the president about that, or if he saw Zelensky's offer. I'm sure he did. I haven't spoken to him about it. I can ask him what he thinks. I certainly don't have any plans to share on a potential trip to Ukraine, though.
And then on China, this last week, Chinese officials were posting videos on social media sites depicting Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk in AI-generated videos working in factories, putting together Nike shoes and iPhones and products like that. Does the White House, have they seen these videos?
That's funny. You got to admit it, that's funny. That the Chinese made AI videos showing our administration putting the laces into Nike shoes and putting the stitching into it, doing their own manufacturing.
Do you guys have a response to that?
I have seen the videos. I'm not sure who made the videos or if we can verify the authenticity, but whoever made it clearly does not see the potential of the American worker, the American workforce. The president believes in the American people, and he knows that we have the best, not only consumer base in the world, but also the best workforce.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about them making fun of us? Because they're kind of right? We're not working hard, right? It's like the team that's out there training really hard, making fun of the other team that's taking it easy, right? When I hear this, I get a little bit of pride, like, okay, touche, you got us. Let's go rally and come back and let's fix it.
Force in the world, and that's why he's so focused on bringing investments home and shoring up our critical supply chains and bolstering our manufacturing here as well. Brett.
Thanks, Caroline. Would the president support a ban on members of Congress trading stocks?
I'm certain that's something the president would be interested in looking at, and I can ask him if he would support such a bill. Sure. Yes.
I have a question about the president's post from this morning on farmers. He asked farmers to be patient and just hold on. But a lot of farmers that I've talked to in the last week or so have said, they're in the middle of spring planting season and that a trade war makes everything sort of up in the air. What would his message to them be? And also, is there anything specifically planned to provide relief like in President Trump's last term?
Yes, well, relief is being considered. The Secretary of Agriculture, I know, has spoken to the president about that. And again, it's being considered. And as for the president's message to the farmers, he put it out himself. He could speak for himself much better than I can speak for him. And so I would just direct you to the statement he had telling the farmers again and reiterating his support for them and that he has their backs, which he certainly does.
Well, the battle between Fed.
All right, there you have it. Things are heating up between Jerome Powell and President Trump. Neither one of them seems to want to have to listen to the other. My guess would be this will be like everything. They will butt heads. Jerome Powell will start to realize, I don't want to fight with the president. The president will calm down when Jerome Powell says, hey, let's talk. They'll have a talk. They'll like each other a lot more. They'll go their own ways and they'll be on the same page. If not, we may find some way to oust Jerome Powell and put somebody else in there that the president thinks is going to make decisions that'll make the country go better. What do I think is going to happen in the short term? I think we're going to get higher rates. I think you're going to see more people moving their money into bonds. I think that the stock market can come down some more. I don't think China is going to come renegotiate with us right away. I do think we're going to have pain. A lot of people in the comments today in today's video seem to agree with that. And I would say I concur. It's going to get more expensive. The thing that I used to pay $145 for, I'm going to have to pay $245 for. There's no getting around it. So I better be careful about the things that I go buy. I'm probably not going to just use retail therapy or shop whenever I'm bored. I'm going to have to wear the same clothes for a little bit longer or take better care of my stuff because it's going to be more expensive. As Steve M just said here, there's a house of pain incoming. Yeah. So let's brace ourselves. Let's take care of our neighbor. Let's take care of our brothers and sisters. Let's be supportive of each other. Let's be encouraging of each other. Let's look to see what we can do to make each other's lives better because we still live in the best freaking country in the entire world. And what makes it great is our brotherly love for each other and our drive to overcome and win. Let's not get sucked into the negativity, to the moaning, to the belly aching, to the complaining, because that's what's been making America suck. The terrible attitude that we've adopted of entitlement that says we should get everything cheap and free and from somebody else because we're a victim of something. Let's move away from that mentality and into a positive, encouraging, can-do attitude, to be frank, that will make everybody more fulfilled. And in the meantime, look out for each other. It's going to get tough. It's going to get harder. I don't think China's coming back right away. I think interest rates are going up. If you've been thinking about a refi, probably makes more sense to do it right now. If not, you're going to have to wait quite some time. Now, after the short term, I do think we're going to work this stuff out with the other countries. We're going to renegotiate. Tariffs are going to come down. We're going to try to get some kind of investment going on in manufacturing here. We're going to bring jobs back to America. We're going to get people working again. We're going to get the economy doing better. We're going to start sending stuff to other countries and getting the stuff that we use in our country made in our country. And there's going to be like a made in America movement that kind of goes on, that picks up some steam. When that happens, I think the housing industry will finally ease up. I think it's locked in place right now. You're not seeing transactions happening. There's not a lot of inventory, so prices aren't plummeting, but there's not a lot of demand to buy houses either, so inventory is not moving. It's just stuck in a vapor lock. And I think we're going to stay here for a while. So if you're trying to time the market, you're not going to see a lot of movement going on. House flippers are going to struggle. Apartment complex owners are going to struggle because you're not going to be able to refinance out of your cheap debt anymore. Businesses are not going to be starting right now because rates are high. Trump wants them lower. Powell doesn't want them lower. That's where we are. So I expect it to be kind of like after you go to the gym and you start working out, you're sore and you're stiff. There's not a lot of movement. You don't get a lot of gains from the workout when you first start. But if we can get through this period of soreness, there is strength and gains on the other side, and you're always glad when you did it. So all that I ask from you is that you subscribe to the channel, you like the video, you share it with somebody that might want to hear it, and that you remind yourself that it usually gets darker before it gets better, that it's probably going to get tougher. That doesn't mean it's going to stay tougher, and we're going to be okay. Thanks, everybody, for following the channel. Thank you for all the commentary that you gave today. Even if you think that I'm a clown, I still love you. DM me the word faith if you're interested in learning about my mastermind Spartan League, and subscribe to the channel so you get notified when more shows come out. I'll see you guys tomorrow.